Good morning, good morning, good morning. I'll just wait for a moment to see if anyone jumps on. If not, that's okay. There's always the replay. I'm a poet, aren't I? A poet. I wasn't planning on coming on live this morning, but I turned on the TV last night just briefly, and the big banner flashed up that Bob Hawke had passed away, and it got me thinking about the guy, because Bob Hawke certainly was one of the most popular Prime Ministers of Australia in recent memory. Well, at least in my lifetime, anyway. And it got me thinking about why. They ran an obituary about him and talked about his life as a union leader, and a kind of a mediator as well. And I thought there's a few things that we could learn from Bob Hawke and the way he lived his life, that us as entrepreneurs can learn as well, and particularly those who operate in social media. You might wonder how that could be possible, because social media wasn't around when Bob Hawke was the Prime Minister between 1983 and 1991. Well, it got me thinking, because I met Bob Hawke once. I met him once probably 14 or 15 years ago, and that experience stayed with me for a few reasons. But I'll just mention a couple of things about Bob Hawke as a public figure. So as a public figure, when he was leader of the union movement, he was known as a bit of a ladies' man. He was known as a drinker, a heavy drinker. Everyone knew that he had an issue with alcohol. But from a very young age, he had ambitions to enter Parliament, and even his mother believed that he could be the Prime Minister of Australia, or that he would be the Prime Minister of Australia. In fact, he entered Parliament, he tried to get a seat in Parliament in 1963. So that was 10 years before I was born, and 20 years before he became Prime Minister, and he failed. He failed at that. So it was another 17 years before he actually came into Parliament in 1980-81. So what people did know about Bob Hawke was that he was a bit of a ladies' man, like I said, a bit of a drinker, but he had this ambition as well, that he wanted to get into Parliament, and he actually wanted to be Prime Minister at some point. And he made a decision. I saw a bit of an interview of him last night, and he made a decision that he could not, he openly admitted that he had a drinking problem, but he decided that because he wanted to be in Parliament, in that public office so much, that he would not touch a drop. And he didn't. For the 11 or so years that he was in Parliament, and especially the 8 years he was Prime Minister, he overcame his addiction to alcohol and trumped it with his desire to be Prime Minister. So it just goes to show that even with huge problems like addiction, if you really want something, you can overcome anything. So that was a big thing that I learnt from Bob Hawke, from what he said. I thought that was interesting, that he put aside those wants that he had, because he still enjoyed a beer even after he left Parliament. But he foregoed all of that for quite a long period of time so that he could hold that public office. And he did that. And lots of people, there's lots of footage of people loving Bob Hawke, and everywhere he went, he was a people's person. I think people of all persuasions felt comfortable with him, and that brings me to the time that I met him, because at the time I met him, I was working at a hotel as a doorman, and one day this limousine pulls up, and as a doorman you just open the doors naturally, and out pops Bob Hawke, I knew it straight away. He's one of the most iconic faces in Australian modern history. And I went, oh, it's Mr. Hawke. And he held out his hand and he smiled at me and made me feel so comfortable, more comfortable than I'd ever been with a well-known personality before. And he said, "G'day, I'm Bob Hawke." And he shook my hand and he made me feel like he was on my level. Now, I don't know whether he was actually a humble man, because a lot of people say that he was okay being on people's level because he knew that he was better than everyone else. That was some of the things that was said in his obituary presentation that I saw last night. But at the very least, he made you feel like he was with you, like he was on your level. He didn't come across as someone who was too important to talk to you. And I think that's one of the things that was very noticeable during his time as Prime Minister. He was relatable. He could relate to so many people on so many different levels. And that's something that we can learn, particularly as social media marketers and influencers and entrepreneurs, is that in my business community in particular, they use the phrase to be your true and authentic self when you present yourself on social media. Obviously, there was no such thing as social media back when Bob Hawke was around, but he did that. He did that through the media. Whenever you saw him, wherever he went, he presented his true and authentic self, even to the point where, you know, he was sometimes crying about some matters of his personal life. I think his daughter was a drug addict, and he ended up, when that came out, he was visibly upset, crying like a father. Like he wasn't the Prime Minister, he was a dad at that particular time. So I think we can learn a lot from Bob Hawke when it comes to being your true and authentic self, because that's what made him so relatable. That's what made him so popular with the people. I don't talk about politicians much, but I only bring this up because he's just passed away. And I remember growing up, I was a teenager for the whole time he was in office, and yeah, like he was a massive figure, like no Prime Minister has been since then. And he was a massive public figure, and he was definitely loved by lots of people because he was just him. And that's something we can learn in our lives, that people will accept us for who you are. That's what people want. People want to see the real you. They don't want to see a pretend you. And yeah, so I thought I'd come on and just share those thoughts this morning. I wasn't going to come on live because, speaking of being the real you, I had a really bad day today. So I had a post that I was going to post about that, but then I turned on the TV last night and saw that Bob Hawke had died, and it just got me thinking about all these things. And yeah, he really was a figure that we can learn a few things from, about overcoming addictions is one, being your true and authentic self, and being relatable to people of all sorts. So for that, he was a very interesting public figure, and someone that we can learn a thing or two from. So I just wanted to come on and share that today. So I hope you all have a great day, and we'll catch you out there sometime in cyberspace. Thanks for watching, guys.